Good afternoon. Welcome to our news bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. Under the chairmanship of Speaker Mohammed Jihad al-Laham, the People's Assembly held a session listening to a political, security and economic briefing presented by Prime Minister Lattakia, who answered the verbal questions on the performance of the government. Speaker Mohammed Jihad al-Laham said that the Syrian people proved through their steadfastness in the face of the most ferocious war of terrorism in modern history that Syria will remain a fortress of resistance. Assembly Speaker emphasized that there is no justification for any failure to provide the citizens' needs and urged finding solutions to the problems that hinder the government's work. Mr. Laham pointed out to the sacrifices of the Syrian Arab army in pounding the terrorists and their hideouts in order to restore security and stability to the country. For his part, Prime Minister Lattakia highlighted the People's Assembly's continuous follow-up for the Cabinet's work, praising the communication and integration between the two legislative and executive institutions with the aim of upgrading the level of the citizens' living conditions. Prime Minister Lattakia expressed appreciation for the People's Assembly's role in activating the sincere efforts exerted on the national, regional and international levels to monitor the performance of the government and to amend the defects. The Prime Minister also praised the distinguished role of the National Reconciliation Committee in accomplishing many achievements across the country. Deputy Foreign and Expatriates Minister Dr. Faisal al-Miqdad discussed with head of the Joint Mission of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and the UN, Sigrid Kaag, and her accompanying delegation, the latest developments related to the destruction of chemical weapons in Syria and the achievements made in the framework and ways of continuing the constructive cooperation between Syria on the one hand and the Organization of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and the United Nations on the other. Miqdad stressed that in spite of Syria's commitment to the implementation of its obligations with what it is related to the destruction of chemical weapons, some countries are trying to politicize, provide help and support to armed terrorist groups who are committing crimes against the nation and the people of Syria. For her part, Kaag praised the Syrian cooperation with the joint mission for what has been accomplished so far in the framework of the implementation of Syria's obligations. She stressed that the joint mission as well as the international community is aware of the size of the challenges and risks related to this subject, especially the difficult security conditions currently in Syria. The head of the joint mission expressed her satisfaction and appreciation for the cooperation of the Syrian authorities to accomplish the mutual goal. Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said that some sides' problems with Lebanese resistance is its political position on the Syrian issue, when Hezbollah said it is against this conflict and the overthrow of government since the first day. And the problem is not due to Hezbollah's military intervention, which came after everyone else had interfered in the crisis in Syria. In a televised speech at the launch of the Jabal Amil Culture and Literature Forum in Ain, Sayyid Nasrallah said the party's rejection of the plot against Syria made the war in Syria target the party, adding, "The resistance did not bow down to the plot because it considers what is happening to be strategic and serious challenges for Syria, the resistance, Lebanon, Palestine and the region." He said the position of the party was political at first, before terrorists moved into areas few hundred meters away from the holy shrine of Sayyida Zainab, which is when the resistance interfered to prevent them from demolishing the shrine. He added the Turkish government speaks of a shrine of the forebearer of the Ottomans, whose name is not known to most of Muslims, and it considers it a Turkish right to interfere militarily in Syria to protect the shrine. He highlighted that the Syrian leadership has welcomed dialogue and expressed readiness to carry out reforms since the beginning of the crisis, but no one was willing to discuss the political solution. He called upon the sides which are interfering in Syria, be them Arab countries or Lebanese parties, to comprehend what is happening in Syria, and that will expose all the region to the dangers of terrorism.
وأما كيف يسمح بعض الناس
Nasrallah said some Lebanese sides have not realized yet that what is happening in Syria is a threat to their own country, adding that there is a fear that Takfiri mentality could seize control, adding that this mentality does not accept anyone, citing the fierce battles between the Islamic State in Iraq and Sham and Jabhat al-Nusra terrorist organizations where thousands of people were killed because of an administrative and organizational difference between them, asking how could these sides live with the rest of the Lebanese, the Syrians and peoples of the region. From the Golan to Al-Quds forum marking the 38th anniversary of the Earth Day kicked off today at the Damascus-based Sham Hotel with the participation of a number of researchers and thinkers. Presidential political and media advisor Dr. Buthaina Shaban said that Al-Quds and Golan are the eyes of the Arab nation, and it is the duty of all to defend them, adding, clinging to the land and sacrificing for it is the only choice for us. Dr. Shaban clarified that the war launched against Syria is not a war of sectarianism, doctrines nor regional. It is a war on our land, and the aim is to control it. She stressed that the Palestinians weren't mistaken when they considered their presence on their land the real and true existence. Shaban noted to the Syrians' attachments to their land in the occupied Syrian Golan. In Lattakia, northern countryside, army units have made further progress and destroyed a den used by the terrorists along with their vehicles and weapons in the Jabal al-Qabir area, eliminating all the terrorists.
The Syrian Arab Army has adopted new tactics in combating the terrorists who have attempted to infiltrate Kasab city, as the geographical landscape requires heavy fire covering. Controlling the strategic hills has given the Syrian army the advantage of uncovering the whole area and its surroundings, which deprived the terrorists of maneuvering despite the heavy fire covering from the Turkish side. The Syrian Arab Army has advanced toward Al-Mur Spring and was engaged in a fierce battle against thousands of Jabhat al-Nusra and Islamic Front terrorists led by the Turkish officers in an attempt to stop the advancement of Syrian Arab Army. Moreover, the Syrian Arab Army and forces of national defense have managed to cut off roads that supply the terrorists along the Syrian-Turkish borders and eliminated the terrorist gathering in Al-Qantara, Koz Mountain and Beit Ablak.
In support of the Syrian Arab Army in its fight against terrorism, thousands of Syrians, Armenians and Arab community in the U.S. crowded in front of the Turkish consulate in Los Angeles, condemning the attacks by the terrorist groups who are backed by Erdogan's justice and development government on Kasab and Lattakia countryside. The participants in the rally held placards denouncing Erdogan's policies against neighboring countries and against the Armenians who more than once were exposed to displacement by Turkish-backed terrorists. The Syrian Arab Army units restored stability and security to the two towns of Ras Marra and Fleita in the Qalamoun area. The army units eliminated a number of terrorists in a series of operations carried out against their gatherings in several areas in Damascus countryside. A military source mentioned that the army units eliminated a number of terrorists, most of them non-Syrians, and destroyed their weapons and ammunition as they restored security to the two towns. The source pointed out that a hideout was destroyed with a large amount of ammunition in Sayma town in the western countryside of Damascus city. Meanwhile, 12 terrorists were killed, including Ahmed Jafal, Omar Hajjar and Marwan Sheikh al-Shabab. In Damascus, security forces seized a number of explosive devices of different weights and shapes that were hidden in sewage systems in the Shurur neighborhood near the graveyard of Bab al-Saghir in order to be used in terrorist attacks against the citizens. Russian Foreign Ministry slammed the UN Human Rights Council latest resolution on Syria, describing it as biased. Russia Today website reported the ministry as saying in a statement that the resolution of the 25th session of the UNHRC on Syria is biased and contradicts the report which was issued by the independent committee recently. UNHRC adopted a resolution on Syria that was strongly rejected by Russia and other countries. The Russian ministry said that violence on the side of gunmen was mentioned in detail in the independent committee's report, such as mass killings, abducting women and children, sexual violence, the recruitment of children, the bombardment of densely populated areas with mortars, and the terrorist acts by the Free Syrian Army, which some partners seek to cast as a moderate opposition. The statement added, "It is odd enough that a whole list of places where the Syrian government suppresses freedom is published, indicating that the committee's report mentioned that every extremist group has its own detention center in which torture takes place." The files of 500 citizens in El Sanamin city in the northern countryside of Daraa were settled in presence of Syria's Grand Mufti Ahmed Badruddin Hassoun. In a speech, Hassoun called the persons whose files were settled to support the Syrian Arab army to put an end to terrorism in the country, adding that holy jihad should be on the Palestinian and Golan lands. He said that the US and its tools in the region aim at destroying Syria, highlighting that many of those who called for false revolution are in five-star hotels in Jordan, the Gulf states and Turkey, at a time in which mercenaries came to fight in Syria from 80 countries. For his part, Daraa's governor, Mohammed Khalid Hannous, called upon all Daraa's locals to be partners in defending the country, adding that El Sanamin was one of the first areas which witnessed reconciliation processes in the province. In turn, head of the National Reconciliation Committee in Sanamin City, Abdullah Al-Hamed, said that settling the files of the aforementioned persons is a preface to a comprehensive reconciliation process. The total number of persons whose files were settled in El Sanamin reached 1,200 persons so far. A mass and prayers were held for the rest of the soul of Patriarch Mar Ignatius Zaka I Awas for Antioch and all the East, who was head of the Syriac Orthodox Church across the world. Participants in the Mass, which was held at Mar Gregorius Cathedral for Syriac Orthodox in Bab-Tuma, Damascus, asserted in their speeches that the late Patriarch was a prominent national figure, a tolerant father, and a rational patron of the Church, who worked on building humanitarian values and educated many priests, sending them to several universities worldwide. He was bold in spreading love and encouraging coexistence, depending on the deep-rooted cultural heritage in Syria. Turkish citizens have headed for the ballot boxes to vote in the deceived municipal elections that would determine the political future of the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his party Justice and Development, amid the unfolding corruption scandals that have disclosed the involvement of many officials who are close to Erdogan. Party Labour has filed a case against Justice and Development Party against the backdrop of the recordings that revealed the attempts by the Turkish government to fabricate pretexts to wage war on Syria. Aydın Leak newspaper has quoted a source at the Labour Party as saying that Erdogan had known about the meeting and its content, adding that he instructed those who took part in the meeting by phone. The Labour Party has demanded to bring those involved in the scandal to justice on charges of provocation and committing crimes against the state. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching us. For more details about Syria and the region, you can always view this bulletin again on syriaonline.sy. After the break, it's over to Vani with our economic and business news. God bless you and long live Syria.